Hi, I'm Dana. Welcome to Made Every Day. I'm going to help you create cool stuff using everyday items. Today we're going to make a basic kids t-shirt. So grab your stuff and let's get started. We all love t-shirts. In fact, you're probably wearing one right now. They're soft, they're comfortable, they're easy to move in, and they are so easy to make. I've broken the project into 4 simple steps. Step 1, gather and prep your materials. Step 2, sew the neckline. Step 3, sew the sleeves. Step 4, sew the sides. Okay, let's start with step 1, gather and prep your materials. Here's what you need. Knit fabric, or a men's extra large t-shirt, ribbing, and a pattern. Now let's talk about that pattern. You have 2 options. 1, you can download and print my pattern that comes in a size 4T. It's free. It's available on my website. Look under tutorials under basic tee. Download it to your computer, print it, and you've got a nice little pattern here in 3 pieces. The other option you have is to make your own pattern. Take a shirt that your kid already owns, turn it inside out so that the seams are facing out, fold it in half, and you need to remember that typically the front and back of the t-shirt are slightly different. The front is cut a little bit lower. Tape a couple pieces of paper together like I've done here, and you're just going to trace with a pencil. Now this is very rough here what I'm doing. You probably want to use a ruler. And if you have it inside out, the seam allowance is already there for you, so you don't really need to add any extra space there. You don't want to trace where the ribbing is on the neckline because we're going to add that later. And when it comes to the sleeves, you know, I'm just kind of winging it here, just kind of folding them in, creating a curve. And there you go. You kind of got a basic pattern here. Cut it out. Make sure you mark that this is a fold, meaning you want to cut it on the fold. And you're ready to go. For this project, we're going to use a men's extra large t-shirt because let's be honest, it is hard to find cool knit fabrics in the fabric store. They're out there, but they can sometimes be pricey. Look in retail stores like Old Navy and Target in their clearance section. They often have extra large or extra large t-shirts, which for kids is perfect because you have a lot of fabric to work with. Now what we're going to do is we're going to cut this shirt apart. Start by cutting off the sleeves. And just cut it right next to the seam line there. And we're going to reuse these sleeves for the new sleeves. Cut off the shoulders, cut off the neckline, and don't ever throw the neckline away. You might want to use the ribbing on the neckline for this t-shirt or for another project. And then you want to cut down the sides. And the other nice thing about using an existing shirt to make a new shirt is that we get to use the hem that's already on the bottom of the t-shirt. We also get to use the hem that's on the sleeve. Okay, now that we've cut our fabric, we're ready to cut the pattern pieces. So what you want to do is take your piece and fold it in half since the pattern says it's cut on a fold. Now take your pattern piece and lay it, as it says, right on the fold and line it up with the hemline that already exists on the shirt. If for some reason you're making this with knit fabric that does not have a hemline already, put it up about 1 inch and then you can create your own hemline later. And then take your scissors and just start cutting. We're going to cut the front the exact same way. Now set that aside and let's cut your sleeve pieces. Okay, for the sleeve, you're going to cut it out the same way that you did with the shirt. Lay the pattern piece, which is also cut on the fold, and cut on the existing hemline. And then just use your scissors and cut right around. Let's cut the other sleeve. Exact same thing here. And there you go. We've got a front and a back, 2 sleeves. Now let's talk about the neckline. We're using a fabric called ribbing, which you'll find on every t-shirt collar, on the cuffs of sweatshirts, and it's called ribbing because it has these little tiny ribs on it that can really allow the fabric to expand and then contract back, which is great on a t-shirt because it can stretch over your big head and still be snug around your neck. Ribbing is easy to find at most fabric stores. It's sold on the bolt, by the yard. In fact, if you just get 1/4 of a yard, it'll go a long way. I usually buy it in 10 different colors and keep it in my stash for whenever I'm ready to sew a t-shirt. For this particular shirt, I couldn't find the color ribbing that I liked in the fabric store, so what I'm going to use is just the fabric from another t-shirt. Standard knit fabric doesn't always work as knitting, but this shirt is pretty stretchy, you can tell, so I think it's going to be fine. Now we're going to cut this for a size 4-year-old boy. We're going to cut 11.5 by 2 inches. Put that together with the t-shirt pattern pieces we cut, and we are done with step 1. So we're going to take this ribbing that we just cut, and we're going to iron it in half. Then we're going to open it up with the folded parts kind of touching each other there. Then we're just going to sew right down the side here with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And you're left with the cool little stretchy neckband that we're going to sew into the shirt. But first we need to create a hole for that neckband to go into. So grab your front and back of the t-shirt that we cut out And with right sides of the fabric together, match them up at the shoulders. And then we're gonna sew it with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And then a really important step with everything that you sew is ironing. I hate to iron, you probably hate to iron, but you gotta do it. So we're gonna come over here to our iron, just iron out those 2 seams, and there we go. Got a cool hole for our neck. Now as you can see, this neck is actually a little bit smaller than the space that it fills, and that's perfect, that's what you want. And this is where pinning is really important. So be liberal with your pinning because you want it to really stay in place. So set your first pin there, then stretch it to the other side of the neck, pin that one in place, and then just start cutting the distance in half. And you'll have to stretch the ribbing a little bit as you go. Try not to stretch the t-shirt underneath. And now we have our neckband all pinned in, ready to go. What we're gonna do is sew on a zigzag stitch. A zigzag stitch is really important when you're using stretchy fabrics because it's a stitch that stretches with your fabric. If you use a straight stitch, it would just break the first moment you pulled it over your head. You need to pull the fabric a little so that the ribbing is kind of taut with the t-shirt fabric. And there you go, I just ironed out our neck, and look at that, it's starting to look like a t-shirt. We're ready to move on to the next step. Grab your 2 sleeve pieces. As you can see on the sleeve, it has a curve at the top that's gonna go right into the curve of the armhole on the t-shirt. So what you wanna do is with right sides of the fabric together, just start pinning it at the very end, and you're gonna go all the way around. Now we're just gonna sew the sleeve. We're gonna use a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And then we're gonna do the same thing to the other side. We're gonna iron out the seam, and then we're ready to move to the next step. Your shirt at this point should look like this. So just lay it down, fold the whole thing in half with right sides together. We're just gonna pin all the way up the sides and up the sleeves. We're just gonna sew in one big sewing line, down the sleeve and down the side. Just use a straight stitch here and a 3/8 inch seam allowance. When you get to the armpit area, leave your needle down, and pick up your presser foot, and then just kind of pivot the shirt. And then just sew right down the side. And there you go. Now you gotta sew the other side. I've just ironed out my side seams. Let's see how it looks. A t-shirt! How cool is that? I'm gonna go make 5 more, and I think you should too. For more patterns and ideas, check out my website, danamadeit.com, and click subscribe so you can be updated on all the latest videos. I'll see you next time.